high-mobility artillery rocket system showed up in Ukraine, it changed the face of battle.
This capability is giving the Ukrainians the potential to completely change the momentum and the direction of this war.
Retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of the U.S. Army in Europe, says HIMARS, which fires a 200-pound warhead up to 50 miles and hits within 10 feet of its intended target, has virtually eliminated Russia's numerical advantage.
You don't have to have hundreds of artillery rounds to achieve the same effect as one rocket fired from HIMARS.
Is Ukraine still outgunned?
In numbers, I'd say yes, but what really matters is effect. And the effect that Ukraine is achieving seems to me at this point to be superior to what the Russians are able to deliver.
Since June, the U.S. has shipped Ukraine 16 HIMARS launchers and thousands of rockets, which defense officials say the Ukrainians have used to attack more than 350 Russian command posts, ammo dumps, supply depots, and other high-value targets far back from the front lines.
The HIMARS and other long-range capabilities have given the Ukrainians the ability to reach out and hit targets that the Russians would have thought were safe.
Why can't they just move all these command posts and ammo dumps further back from the front line and get them out of range?
You still got to get that ammunition to the guns, which are closer to the front. So now you've increased the distance that the trucks have to move carrying very heavy ammunition. And they've lost well over 1,000 of their trucks in this campaign so far. And of course, the result is significant reduction in the amount of Russian artillery and rocket fire impacting on Ukrainian forces.
All that from a weapon made at this Lockheed Martin plant in rural Arkansas, a seemingly minor outpost in America's vast military-industrial complex, which is now racing to catch up with the sudden demand for HIMARS.
We'll give you a brief overview of the chassis line here.
We accompanied the Pentagon's chief weapons buyer, Dr. William LaPlante, as he made plans to dramatically increase production.
We have to plan for at least to double this. Production here probably will need to double.
How long can you keep that up?
As long as the demand is needed. We can keep production lines open for 30 years.
So you heard the man from the Pentagon. He said probably going to double production. Can you double production?
Absolutely.
Chief Operating Officer Frank St. John says the plant is currently turning out about 7,500 rockets a year.
We have capacity to produce 10,000 rockets a year. That's a rocket every 10 minutes, if you do the math on that. And we're also doing similar analysis to potentially take that up to 12 or 14,000 rockets a year.
So how fast can you do this?
I would say on the order of 18 to 24 months to make any significant changes in the production quantities.
The nose cone carries a satellite guidance system which gives the rocket its sniper-like accuracy. But what impresses LaPlante most about HIMARS is not the sophistication of its technology, but the simplicity of its use.
There are just 3 operators, probably 18 to 20 years old, and they can use this and they can use it effectively within a week. Okay, that is to me as important as its accuracy, it's reliable, and can be done by 18-year-old Ukrainians.
To see how HIMARS operates in the field, we went to the U.S. Army training range in Yakima, Washington, where they used the same tactics taught to the Ukrainians. This is the hide site where the HIMARS tries to conceal itself from enemy surveillance. Once it leaves here for its firing point, the HIMARS is liable to be detected and targeted. So the clock starts ticking. The HIMARS launcher has a top speed of 55 miles an hour, but off-road in the high desert it's more like 35. Once it's out in the open, it has about 5 to 7 minutes to find its firing position, train its rockets on the target, and fire. One rocket every few seconds. The crew chief of this HIMARS is Staff Sergeant Cammie White.
How'd you guys do?
We did well.
What does that mean, well?
Whenever we get a fire when ready, it's as fast as you can fire it. So with that, I think our time was around 3 minutes.
3 minutes from the time you got the mission to the time the rockets took off.
Yes, sir.
When the HIMARS fires, the rocket exhaust gives away its position. so it has to get out of there fast before the enemy can strike back.
How long do you have to get out?
Oh, as quickly as possible.
And how long does that take?
Roughly a minute.
It's called shoot and scoot, and the Ukrainians are doing it now in their counteroffensive against Russian forces occupying Kherson, making the most of the 16 HIMARS provided by the U.S.
16 just doesn't sound like a lot.
It's nowhere near what I think Ukraine could use. I mean, look at the effect they've achieved with 16. Imagine if they had 3 or 4 times that many.
This weapon can strike 40 different targets at the same time, obliterating any vehicle or structure in its path. It attacks with perfect accuracy and at an incredible distance. Any guess as to what it is? I'll give you a hint. This cannon doesn't mind destroying bridges. That's right. I'm talking about the HIMARS, which has become an internet sensation thanks to its success in Ukraine. But that was just the older version. After a series of upgrades, the fighting strength of the HIMARS has increased even more. More targets, more speed, more power. How did its creators manage to achieve this? You're about to find out. The HIMARS is officially described as a highly mobile multiple launch rocket system. The installation is designed to destroy anything that could threaten a civilian population. Neither tanks, nor artillery, nor fortified positions can withstand its power. So what's so great about this vehicle? Of course, its ability to decimate the enemy. The HIMARS is second to none in this field because it can fire a huge array of various projectiles. Firstly, there are the unguided M26A1 and A2 taken from the MLRS installation. This is a 227mm projectile with an increased range of up to 28 miles. It includes a cluster warhead designed to take down groups of enemies. It opens up mid-flight and releases over 500 fragments, each of which can pierce the armor of a tank. Its high cruising speed allows it to bypass most types of air defenses, all thanks to an extended rocket engine and a new booster. It also has a built-in self-destruct mechanism, which reduces the possibility of civilian casualties, as the unexploded fragments are destroyed one day after the initial detonation. If the exact opposite is required, that is to make a particular area impassable, there's the M28 projectile with a strike range of 25 miles. Its cluster warhead is filled with AT-2 anti-tank mines that blow out the undersides of enemy vehicles, penetrating armor up to 6 inches. Just one salvo and a dense minefield is created over an area larger than 35 football fields. There's no passing through such an obstacle without suffering significant losses. Not enough, you say? Well, no matter. The HIMARS has something even more serious. We're talking about the MGM-140 ground-to-ground guided missiles created by legendary company Lockheed Martin. These will definitely do the trick because their strike range can reach an incredible 186 miles. You could destroy an entire enemy base with such a projectile because 1,200 pounds of explosives is no joke. Oh right, this missile also carries 950 combat elements that can cover an area twice as large as the one we previously mentioned. By the way, it also has an older version called the MGM-164. This ordnance is divided into 13 high-explosive fragmentation parts, each of which has more than enough lethal force. This rocket's charm is that it takes a semi-ballistic flight trajectory, meaning that its initial acceleration follows a programmed path, while the rest of the flight is in a controlled status. Simply put, the MGM-164 can be redirected in mid-flight, enabling it to bypass all sorts of air defenses. How do you like that? In addition to all this, the HIMARS developers figured out how to make it a true terror on the battlefield. It was recently equipped with the ability to fire a new fragmentation projectile capable of splitting into 60 individual homing units. You heard that right. 60 laser-guided warheads that can independently seek out their targets and attack directly from the sky like a flock of falcons. What's more is that each ordnance can be individually programmed so that the required number of shells fly into different types of equipment to completely destroy the target. Seeing the HIMARS in action on the front lines in Ukraine is a convincing demonstration of its power. This beauty's handiwork includes an exploded ammunition depot, destroyed enemy columns, and broken bridges. In terms of its combat strength and mobility, it's every bit as powerful as the Bayraktar, or even the A-10 fighter plane, which by the way is considered one of the best. I think it'll do just as well in Taiwan too if it comes to that. Laurel Vought Systems, the company behind the development of the HIMARS, knows a lot about destructive weapons. Initially, they wanted to make something that would combine the best that modern technology had to offer in speed, defense, combat strength, and versatility. Let me tell you, they did a great job. Delving a little into the history of this invention, the company had started developing a universal launch container with the highest possible caliber in order to test all the latest shells in the U.S. Army's arsenal. The idea ended up being so successful that it was immediately decided to mount it on a wheeled chassis while maintaining the structure's light weight. That's because the installation had been ordered by the Air Force, and it was critical that they be able to transport their weapons by aircraft. As a result, the HIMARS became a successful replacement for the heavier MLRS artillery, which can hardly be called mobile. All they had left to do was figure out how to reload the thing. The company decided not to be smart and simply replace the spent containers with new ones. These are loaded with rockets and sealed at the factory. These pods can weigh over 2 tons, so an additional machine is needed for reloading, which is supplied with the HIMARS. The containers themselves consist of 6 fiberglass pipes fastened together. Inside each of them is spiral threading to give the projectile rotation and acceleration, both of which are critical for lethal power. You probably think I've already covered the most interesting thing, but trust me, that's not all the American artillery has up its sleeve. The M142 combat vehicle is mounted on the improved chassis of a 5-ton Stewart & Stevenson truck. It features a Caterpillar diesel engine with a gas turbine supercharger. Its 290 horsepower allows it to accelerate to 53 miles per hour, and yet it has enough power reserve to drive at least half the country. Obstacles are no problem for the HIMARS because it can wade through 3 feet of water without damaging the equipment. Speaking of equipment, the latest version of the installation includes upgrades to automation. Previously, most of the electronics had been taken from the existing MLRS vehicle. The solution, while economical, clearly lagged behind modern standards. Now the HIMARS has its own uniquely designed fire control system, an improved control panel, interfaces, and guided mechanisms. All of this has given a significant boost to the accuracy of its shots with a maximum deviation of 5 feet. The machine now also has quick deployment, transitioning to a combat-ready status in just 8 minutes. Such high mobility means that the artillery can quickly leave its position after a volley, so quickly that enemy radar doesn't even have time to detect it. In addition, the developers have improved the gun's intelligence and added the ability to interface with other similar installations like the NASAMS complex does. This means that the HIMARS can still be useful on the battlefield, even when damaged by transmitting intelligence and scanning the area. It can do so thanks to its built-in infrared sensors that can detect the enemy even behind cover. The navigation system has also undergone changes. This is where Starlink, already famous for its convenience and speed, comes into play. The installation's defenses have also improved. The cockpit's external armor protects personnel from large-caliber small arms such as machine guns and sniper rifles, and an additional inner layer of Kevlar sheathing stops shrapnel, allowing the crew to survive even a high-explosive shell explosion. If only they'd added a demining system like France's Caesar howitzer, it would have turned out to be an unstoppable combat monster. Luckily, the developers are already working on it. The vehicle's controlled by 3 people, a driver, a gunner, and a commander. But if necessary, the whole thing can be operated by 1 soldier. The crew can rest easy when it comes to chemical weapons too, because the HIMARS has filters that supply purified air to the cockpit. The result is a strong, powerful, mobile, long-range piece of heavy equipment. It's actually even become more mobile. Due to its compact size, the M142 can be transported by a special C-130 Hercules aircraft. This is in order to have the fastest possible response to a military threat. This formidable weapon shows up on the battlefield in just a couple of hours. Quite a surprise for the enemy. The creators still have a few unfinished trump cards up their sleeves. First, the HIMARS will be able to attack with even more powerful ammo in the near future. America's already testing some specimens that are similar to Russia's vacuum rockets. There are also plans to supply up to 2 reconnaissance drones with the installation so the battlefield can be observed even when the infrared sensors are out of commission. Ultimately, the M142 could acquire a full-fledged artificial intelligence that would allow the entire system to be controlled remotely. But even without all these innovations, the HIMARS is an excellent, unique weapon that can bring any opponent to their knees.